Hi there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. You can look at Darth Vader's cybernetic body and think to yourself, man, this guy had it rough, or if you're like me, the constant optimist, you can also frame Vader's damaged body as the body of the ultimate survivor. After doing just a little bit of research, I can confirm that Darth Vader definitely has almost died more than any other person in Star Wars history, even more than Emperor Palpatine, his master. And so today we're going to take a look at some of his closest brushes with death. After the fall of the Republic, Darth Vader was tasked with hunting down any existing Jedi he could find. Jocasta Nu, the head librarian of the Jedi Order, was never a particularly strong fighter, but her knowledge of the temple and its archives were second to none. And it's because of this knowledge she's able to outlast many of the other stronger members of the Jedi Order. Plus, Jocasta Nu had a self-appointed mission she had to fulfill before dying, and that was to enter the Jedi archives and erase them so that the Sith could not gain access to the Jedi's deepest hidden secrets. After Jocasta erased the archives, she used her knowledge of the hidden vault inside of the Jedi Temple to retrieve an ancient and forbidden weapon known as the lightsaber rifle. This was an extremely powerful energy beam rifle that was powered by a lightsaber. The weapon could shoot a destructive beam that pulverized anything in its way. Darth Vader is barely able to deflect the flow of the weapon when Jocasta fires it at him. Unfortunately for her, the volatile weapon could only be fired so many times before melting down. Almost a year later, the uneasy peace between the Mon Cala and the Empire is falling apart. Darth Vader is sent to the planet to bring order and justice to the Mon Cala. Vader leads a successful assault against the Fish People and is able to capture King Li Char when the Mon Cala monarch calls upon the animals of the deep to destroy his own city and take out Darth Vader along with them. You'll see this, a lot of people realize that they can't kill Darth Vader, so they try to suicide themselves along with Darth Vader right next to him. This is something he's very used to. Vader survives the initial flood and destruction. Having a fully sealed and pressurized armor suit means that he can breathe underwater quite well. But soon after, he has to contend with a gigantic squid monster, something that actually happens to him quite frequently. And the giant squid monster almost rips him apart, but Vader once again survives. After the Mon Cala insurgency, Darth Sidious and Darth Vader must contend with another insurgency on the Twilight homeworld of Ryloth. But on their way to Ryloth, they first stop in the Denon system. There they visit the training academy Star Destroyer known as the Defiance. The Defiance was under the instruction of Commandant Pelabalo, a grizzled veteran from the old Republic Navy era. Cadet Ray Sloan was seated at the hyperdrive station when she was commanded by the Commandant to jump to the Christophsis system as a part of a cadet training exercise. But before Ray Sloan could put her own coordinates in there, the Commandant steps in and says that her coordinates are going to lead them right towards a singularity and potentially get them all killed, and so he puts in his own coordinates. But Ray Sloan and Darth Vader notice that the Commandant's coordinates are the ones that are wrong, and will lead the ship directly into a star. Vader quickly realizes that this is more than just a mistake by the Commandant, but an assassination attempt. He has Ray Sloan correct the coordinates, and then reports Belo's treason to the Emperor. Vader ends up force-choking Belo to death and escapes from another very close encounter with death. The Free Ryloth movement was led by Cham Syndulla, former Clone Wars partisan and guerrilla fighter. When news arrived that Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader were visiting the system to inspect the local garrison, the Free Ryloth movement came up with one of the most brilliant strategies for assassination I've seen in Star Wars. It's like very multi-tiered. When the Star Destroyer Perilous arrives in system with Sidious and Vader, Cham Syndulla uses an entire fleet of Clone Wars era starfighter droids and space mines to overwhelm the ship's defenses. The initial attack was enough to disable the Perilous, but not destroy it. When the Empire calls for reinforcements in the form of maintenance ships to repair the Perilous so it could continue on its journey, Cham Syndulla infiltrates the maintenance teams with his own sabotage teams, and they manage to basically overload the hyperdrive. Unfortunately, Sidious and Vader escaped the explosion on their Lambda-class shuttle and were able to evade more Free Ryloth partisans and starships on their way down to Ryloth. The two Sith end up landing in the wilderness in the middle of lilac country. Lilacs were gigantic insects that lived in hives and tunnel systems deep underground. They're basically like the arachnids from Starship Troopers, but much worse. Vader and Palpatine would spend the next few days in the wilderness evading Twilight resistance patrols and also giant swarms of lilacs. Somehow the two managed to survive this entire ordeal. Shortly after telling Luke that he was his father and also cutting his hand off, Darth Vader found himself in a slump. The sight of Luke made the Dark Lord think about his beloved Padme, who had tragically died from unknown circumstances at the end of the Clone Wars. Vader never did find out what happened to her, so he took some time off from crushing rebels to investigate the matter all by himself. He eventually runs into a striking woman who looks almost exactly like Padme, but was actually one of her handmaidens, the Queen's Shadow, known as Sabe. Sabe and Darth Vader both want to know who killed Padme, and so they join forces reluctantly. Sabe has an entire group of Naboo loyalists backing her. They call themselves the Amidalans, and they serve the late Queen. Even though Vader tries his best not to show it, he has a soft spot for Sabe, and that almost gets him killed on multiple occasions, like when a bunch of Vendaxan land squids jump them, or like when some of Sabe's Amidalans try to jump him at Padme's lake house, or like later on when Vader and Sabe enter one of Naboo's seas and their submersible is breached by a gigantic hollow claw fish. When they finally do reach the safety of an underwater Gungan shelter, the Amidalans then use a beacon to call in a Sando Aqua monster, a much larger aquatic beast, to take out Vader once and for all. The Dark Lord somehow survives all of this, and for some reason he doesn't even lay a finger on Sabe, despite the fact that she is clearly trying to kill him. This is a very toxic relationship Vader needs to let go. Then Vader arrives in Theed, the capital city of Naboo, and is confronted by an army of Amidalans, and they try their best again to kill Vader. But again, they don't stand much of a chance. Vader cuts right through them and arrives at Padme's tomb, which is then guarded by her 5 remaining handmaidens, including Sabe. They too are quickly dispatched, but Vader doesn't kill any of them. You can see here that Vader has a severe weakness for women that kind of look like Padme. Finally, Vader arrives on Polis Massa, where Padme died so many years ago, but before we can find out what exactly happened here, the rest of the Amidalans arrive in more starfighters and spacesuits and begin attacking. Once again, Vader is no match for the rebels, and he quickly dispatches them. When the dust settles, the Dark Lord manages to find an old midwifery droid and finds a recording of Padme's last words to Obi-Wan. She basically says that there's still good in Darth Vader somewhere deep down inside of him. I know this one entry has like a dozen escapes from death, but there are a lot of occasions where people have tried to kill Vader, so we're going to try to condense some of these. Now, this whole ridiculous sequence of events with Darth Vader and the Amidalans was witnessed by Emperor Palpatine, and he is pissed. When Vader returns, he gets a full Sith lightning treatment from his master to his face. Not only has Vader failed to kill Sabe and the handmaidens, which is basically abetting terrorism, he also clearly is not over Padme, and letting his emotions make him very weak and susceptible to assassinations. Darth Sidious would toy with Darth Vader for a while, but eventually he just rips off all of his cybernetic limbs, leaving him very much in the same state he found him in on Mustafar. Well, actually, because Palpy McScrotumface is a vindictive bastard, he actually takes Vader back to Mustafar and leaves him at the edge of the same lava river where he found him. I guess he wants Vader to rebuild himself again using anger. While Vader is crawling around on his nubs on Mustafar, Emperor Palpatine sends the assassin Ochi of Bestun to finish off the Dark Lord. Like a true friend and a mentor, Darth Sidious wants to make Vader stronger through more adversity and murder attempts. Ochi is a dangerous individual who's killed many Jedi and other Force users, but even against a weakened Darth Vader, who's now sporting droid parts for legs and arms, Ochi is no match. Vader ends up being drawn into the lair of a dangerous creature known as the Eye of Webbish Bog, keeper of a Sith Wayfinder, which could guide Vader towards Emperor Palpatine's greatest hidden secret. But before he can get to the Eye of the Webbish Bog, he must defeat several lava flies and a gigantic rogwort. That's the thing that killed Gandalf the Grey and made him into Gandalf the White. Vader eventually retrieves the Wayfinder, but while leaving, he's set upon by the droid Crutch Pirates of Bestun. They're after Vader because they believe his suit of armor has some advanced technology they can salvage. The captain of the droids, however, is disappointed to find that Vader's armor is basically made up of substandard consumer parts that you can buy at Home Depot. Even so, the droid pirates are no match for Darth Vader, and the Dark Lord once again survives his enemies. When Kylo Ren made it all the way to Exegol in the beginning of Episode 9, his journey seemed a little bit too rushed and perhaps a little too easy. That's only because Darth Vader made that same journey many years before him and killed everything along the way that was guarding it. Using the Sith Wayfinder, Vader arrives on the outskirts of the Exegol system. He first has to evade 3 Star Destroyers and their complement of starfighters, all under the command of Administrator Sly Moore, who was now fighting him in order to gain more favor from Palpy McScrotumface. All Vader has is a lightly armed and armored ETA Actis Interceptor, but he manages to destroy dozens of TIE fighters before breaking it off and beelining it directly into the nebula guarding Exegol. Unfortunately, Vader finds a massive Summa Veremoth guarding his way, the same thing that Solo found in the middle of the Acades Maelstrom. This massive monster starts killing everything around it, including many of the TIE fighters pursuing Vader. To make matters even worse, the Summa Veremoth attempts to break Vader mentally by using the Force to impose its will on his mind. And so while Vader is supposed to be flying a highly complicated starfighter through a very dangerous nebula, he's actually just tripping balls and having squid-induced flashbacks of him and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luckily, the planet of Exegol breaks Vader's ship's momentum when he flies straight into the ground. Vader then uses the Force back on the Summa Veremoth and bends it to follow his will. The Dark Lord uses the Summa Veremoth to fight 2 lobster-like monsters which are now guarding Darth Sidious and Exegol. The Summa Veremoth manages to win the lobster fight, and then Darth Vader, who has this newfound confidence, sends the large beast after his own master. But Darth Sidious's command of the Force is far too strong, and he basically forces the Summa Veremoth to suicide itself. Vader then ventures into Sidious's cloning facilities and is attacked by Sith experiments wielding Force staffs. Vader suffers some damage, but again is able to prevail. At which point, an entire mob of Sith cultists swarm Vader with knives, but they too are no match for the Dark Lord. Vader continues to venture deep into the heart of Sidious's lair, where he witnesses the construction of the gigantic Star Destroyer fleet equipped with Death Star lasers we would see in Episode 9, but that too does not faze him. Finally, at the center of the compound, Darth Vader finds a massive kyber crystal structure, larger than anything he's ever seen. It's here that Vader finally understands the true power of Darth Sidious and kind of falls back into line. Vader realizes that Darth Sidious is far too strong to resist and challenge by himself. So Vader now is back in the fold and has a few more surgeries to replace his cybernetic limbs after a strenuous ordeal and coup attempt. Darth Vader is once again on Emperor Palpatine's good side, and so that means he has to find Luke Skywalker and bring him to the dark side. This is when he runs into the droid crush pirates of Bestoon once again, and they're accompanied this time by IG-88. IG-88 might have been an employee of Darth Vader for a short period of time after the Battle of Hoth, but soon after, he was hired by Administrator Sly Moore. Sly Moore, as always, was looking for another way to increase her own power at the expense of other members of Palpatine's inner circle. This type of Sith backstabbing is always encouraged. Sly Moore had gotten her hands on the schematics for Vader's suit, and she was able to give IG-88 a remote that could basically lock up all of Vader's joints. IG-88 looks to be on the verge of killing Vader when the Sith Lord uses the Force to grab the robot's remote and frees himself. At the same time, he turns the remote onto IG-88 and forces the robot to shoot himself in the face. Now, Vader would attempt to lure Luke Skywalker to him by using Han Solo's frozen carbonite body. Han Solo had been lost by Boba Fett before he could deliver him to Jabba the Hutt. The Dark Lord would approach Booku the Hutt and ask him for assistance. Unfortunately, Booku, who randomly has a six-pack, has joined up with the Crimson Dawn, and in a last-ditch effort, he tries to take out Vader by destroying his own ship with him on it. But somehow Vader is able to take several pieces of Booku's wrecked ship and form an ad hoc escape pod around him and survive the explosion. So there you have it, guys. 10 instances in which Darth Vader narrowly escaped his death. I mean, I'd be lying to say that these are the only times he escaped death, because there are many, many more occurrences. Let me know in the comment section below which one is your favorite, especially ones that I haven't mentioned in our own video here. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.